I love abysmal dog shit, and I hope you do too, because today we are flying out what is basically, I would consider the practical joke of the entire patch. And the practical joke, the cherry on top of a practical joke that has been running for the past year on the German tech tree. We are flying the F4 KWS LV, and it might as well be called the FRF KMS because it makes me want to kill myself. Because in Sim, this plane is absolutely, positively, on paper awful because it's exactly what you would expect. It's an F4F airframe. It's an F4E airframe. It's got the Agile Eagle, and it's basically like we took Grandpa out of the retirement home, gave him an MP3 player in the form of like a radar and a better missile, and said, you know what? You're just as good as you were in the 1960s. Cue up that Fortunate Son. We're going to be going out here, and we're going to be owning the fuck out of some F-15s. We're going to be owning the fuck out of some F-16s. But it's not because like we're young and limber. It's not because we're young and good. It's because for as much as I complain about the game, for as much as I complain about the balance, and I'm going to complain about it because it is important for literally everyone, the more imbalanced they make it, the lower hanging fruit gets attracted into, like, you know, all the shit that's overpowered. That's why you have people on the War Thunder Sim Discord going, what? I got 2 kills and 8 deaths in the F-15C. This play was supposed to be dominant, and it just isn't dominant. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And it's like, bruh, used more than 2 brain cells. But much like brain cells, much like longevity, this plane has about as much longevity as Joe fucking Biden, which is not very good. It's not a very good plane because basically what the Germans did is they took an F4 and they slapped an F-18 radar in it, and they slapped some AMRAAMs on it. That's pretty much it. They didn't even like give it like a new gun sight. They didn't give it like an actual HUD. We have the 1960 style gun sight in the plane, which means this TWS mode is kind of like more or less missing like 50% of the functionality because like you can't tell where the guy is. You can't tell the guy that you're looking at based on the TWS. You have to look at the radar screen itself and kind of interpolate whether or not it's like moved up or down and kind of just like make a scientific wild ass guess of what you're shooting at. And this is like a pretty big limitation if you're going to get within visual range, which thankfully, because you're an F4 Phantom at 13.0, the gameplay loop is like it's pretty self-explanatory. You don't want to get engaged by anyone at close range because unless you're like super duper expert, like dogfighting pilled, have 2 seconds of fuel and the other guy is complete absolute dog shit, an F-16C is going to clap the shit out of you. An F-15C is going to clap the shit out of you. An F-15A is going to clap the shit out of you. Literally everything else on the enemy team is going to clap the shit out of you. It's an F4. It's literally just an F4. It is nothing more than an F4. It just has better missiles and a better radar. And at top tier, for whatever reason, because of the teams, because of the way that Sim is, because like you're getting a lower quality of player on the US team than you're getting even in Air RB. Like, for whatever reason. I don't understand it, but these motherfuckers love eating AMRAAMs. They just love eating them like fucking candy. Like, they eat them like fucking cheeseburgers. And it means that my gameplay experience in this plane is like, it's been like fairly not bad. It's not good. I'm cherry picking a game. This is a game where I did good. I have a couple of games where I did good. And I'm really just taking advantage of the fact that the enemy team is made up of people that are fucking clueless. I can also make a kill compilation of, like, me trying to fight Simply Sinful in a random game and getting my ass fucking handed to me every time. Because guess what? F-16C, more AMRAAMs, has an actual flight model, and basically the same radar. Yeah, the F-18 and the F-16 radars are different. The Super Search mode is, like, +2 degrees on this one and -2 on the other one. It's super slight, super subtle. It doesn't matter. The radar on this thing is well and away a lot better than the Su-27, and the AIM-120 is well and away better than the R-77. So you actually have kind of sort of the ability to contest some of these, like, technically BVR fights. I wouldn't consider them true BVR because not everyone's climbing up to altitude and doing the right thing. Most people don't understand what to do, and you can abuse that. You can also abuse the fact that most people are used to avoiding the R77, which, I mean, you just kind of like do like a lazy pull in one direction or the other, and the thing is probably like falling out of the sky. Like you could basically just ignore that. That's what's going to happen. At the same time, the way that you play this plane, because you know you can't maneuver, you just try to not get close, and you try to use your 4 entire AMRAAMs to the best of their ability, and that's all you're going to see. Like, honestly, I could take this video, clip everything out of the cockpit, make it just focus on the radar screen, and that would be the whole entire gameplay. You get within range of the AMRAAM, you try to shoot them at high altitude, you try to shoot them at high speed, try to loft them a little bit, and you guide them to within pitbull range, and then you turn away. It's literally a 1980s song. You'd be like, turn around, and that's what you do. You turn around. That's really all you have to do. And against the majority of people, it's probably going to work just fine. It will work until it doesn't. And if you're smart, if you're a sim content creator, if you want people to think that the plane is good, you just pick the game where it works, which, I mean, that's what I've got here. I've got the game where it works, because all the people on the enemy team have potatoes for fingers. They don't actually know what's going on. We're even going down into low altitude to use our missiles that are within visual range. Like this guy that's ahead of us, like, he's clueless. Like, he doesn't have the radar angled down. He just, like, doesn't know. Like, I don't know why he flew into the missile, but we don't even have a HUD, though. We can't even tell what altitude he's at unless we, like, look at where the radar is slewing. At the same time, we get pushed by an F-16, we get pushed by an F-15. If you get pushed in this plane, it's kind of over for you. So you really have to take your time, go off to the side, try to put yourself in something that is like an offensive position, because as long as you can get like the first missile off that's like actually viable, if the other guy tries to follow you, he can die. That's what the AIM-120 is good at. That's what the radar is good at. You also have pretty good reacquisition time because you have a good radar. You can use the super search mode, and as long as you slew it to the left or the right, so you turn to the left, you slew it to the left, you slew it to the horizon, you slew it to where you think the guy's going to be. If you can pick him up first, you can launch your AMRAAM first, and then turn away. If he's in something like an Su-27, his refresh time is really bad. But guess what? You're not fighting Su-27s you're fighting F-15Cs, you're fighting F-16Cs. This thing is never, ever going to be against Russian planes. So the part where your asymmetric matchup might actually make sense, might actually play to your advantage, it doesn't. You're literally just fighting everything that's you, but better. So you're just relying on enemy players being bad. But because you're fighting U.S. players, and because everyone knows that U.S. is overpowered right now, you're getting a lot of people that are low-hanging fruit. So it kind of works out. Now, with the AIM-120s, with the plane, with the flight forms, with all of that stuff, what do you want to do with it? Well, you want to take it to altitude. You want to take it to medium altitude. Probably, ideally, I'd say maybe the ideal strategy is to go to the side, go to contrail altitude, go just below that, build up as much speed as you can, and then when you get a good radar contact, zoom climb, chuck your missile, and then guide it to within pitbull range. Now, the way that you tell that's within pitbull range, which is pitbull's when the radar seeker that is on the missile head takes over from your radar, is when this little circle we got here, we got the little circle, we're going to crank to the right, and we're looking at him, and we're looking for, like, more dots coming off of him, because we know that if dots come off the counter launch, we might have to, like, do a little bit more aggressive, like, cranking left and right. But as soon as that circle disappears, we just do the turn around, and then we go back to our fucking base to get more AMRAAMs. That's literally it. Shoot the missile, turn around, chaff if you're launched on. That's really, but that is all there really is to the plane. And guys like this dude, the F-14A, he's going to fly into it. Now, that's understandable that he flies into it because he doesn't have a RWR that actually works. But everyone else, an F-15C, an F-16, all these other dudes that fly into this shit, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, these dudes are just so used to a free win against, I don't know, R-77s or anything else. They just ignore the shit. They must have it, like, turned down to fucking zero. I do not know. I can't explain it. But we get Pitbull here, and we're going to crank all the way to the right. He's close enough. We're trying to get to the 90. but we're also not getting locks. We're not really concerned about it. We have to pay attention to the RWR. We get a track, we get a launch. F-16, Cole Shepard, he's dead. And we just kind of like, we dove out and we flew away. And we flew back in. This guy here, this guy's a concern. This is kind of like what you don't want, is you don't want guys popping up at close range within kind of like a no escape zone. You can't like escape from this for the most part. But we're going to try anyways. We dive down. We got MSL, F-14, all that crap in the background. And F-14B flies into it. So we're just going to kind of fly away. And it's really what a lot of this plane is. Using the radar, having radar discipline, knowing how to angle the radar down, up, and kind of like know where to search, when to search, is a pretty big deal. Now, there's a couple things that you can do to improve your radar search efficiency. Number one, mapping the manual controls matters, but also learning how to use them and learning kind of like how to sort out your altitude, how to sort out your targets. It's a pretty big deal, or it can be. We get to Pitbull. This guy's going to fly into it. I'm still flying towards him to like get in a follow-up shot if I have to, but because he flew perfectly straight, I'm looking at that going, hey, he's not turning. I'm gonna turn around and go the fuck away. This guy probably flies into it. But with the radar, the thing that you want to be cognizant of is kind of the altitudes, because you can be pitched up, pitched down, and the radar is gonna pitch to the horizon wherever it slewed last. One of the things that you can do though is when you're not finding people, when you're not finding shit, is if you have a friendly and you find the friendly, like put the radar on the friendly, because that's going to put the radar at the altitude that it probably needs to be looking at for enemy players. We shoot this guy and we're split S-ing, and the missile's pitbull right away. The missile is going straight towards the guy. We don't want to close the distance because we're an F4 Phantom. We want to fly the fuck away. And if he flies towards us, he eats the missile. If he doesn't fly towards us, we get the distance and we can make him eat the missile again. So we're going to see what happens, and we're timing down. We have like the timer in the top left. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. At this point though, the right move is to fly away, fly home, and turn the radar off. Basically, you should turn the radar on to search ahead, but maybe we're not going to do that because this clip actually goes on longer, and we're going to turn back into him because we didn't kill that F-15. We know they can run us down. We know that he has good radar, and we know that we're getting pinged, so he should, in theory, have a good idea of where we're at. So we're going to dive below terrain, get into cover. RWR shit disappears. It means he doesn't see us. It means that we can pop up somewhere else, and we're using like this little bit of micro terrain to maybe manage it. Downside is we have the radar off, which means we don't necessarily know where he's at too, but we're picking up a front left, and we're going to try to use the IR missiles. Now, the AIM-9L is also like another insult to injury. We have the 9LI, the 9L improved. The missile that Gaijin said they were not going to add when people were asking about the Gripen, even though that this is historically, supposedly, probably the most accurate missile for the Gripen. This guy did not see the missile. He pre-flared, but he didn't get the missile off. We pre-flared a little bit. We're safe. We shoot the dude in the face. We fly on. 9LI, literally just like cherry on top of insulting, because we have the worst flight model possible at top tier. We have a good radar and good everything else. And we have technically the worst drawback of like IR missiles, because we have a 9M that has a smoke trail. The thing that like, why couldn't we just have this like 6 months ago? Like you could have just put the 9LI as the default for sim stuff on anything else and have not made the game totally, completely ass trash for the last like 9 months to a year or so. Like, the Gripen would have been fine with the 9LI. That would be, like, a noticeable drawback to flying the plane for the last, like, 6 months. But no, we can't have that. But as soon as, like, Germany gets some ash trash, Phantom it doesn't even have a HUD. Like, you can't, like, I'm TWSing this guy. I don't know where he's at. I'm using context clues on the radar to just kind of guess. And because I play props and stuff and I know how to dot spot, like, yeah, I can find this guy, but from the perspective of like someone trying to learn the game, the usability of something like the F-16C, the F-15C, literally anything on the blue side of the tech tree is just like, it's just so much better. It's like ridiculous. It's dumb. it is dumb. Like, this is clown world. But we're still doing good. We're still killing people. And this game is exceptional. Or it's one of my more exceptional games. I've been able to kind of duplicate this performance looking at some of the queues. And basically, a lot of the queues I look for guys that are by themselves. I look for guys that aren't radar pinging. I try to avoid furballs of more than one target, just because it's harder to radar guide our missiles into a furball and actually have them be viable. Also, the guys in the furball are likely to chaff and flare and like inadvertently dodge the missile, but when you have like one guy who is determined to come in and kill you, one guy that doesn't understand BVR, doesn't understand like once you get pressured, once you go defensive, that is a huge advantage for literally any plane, but it's especially a pretty big advantage for this. Like, we can run the risk of closing the distance because chances are he's going to give us that side aspect for our 9LI, and it's probably going to hit. So the fact that the plane is ass doesn't really matter. Or it matters, but it doesn't matter when it doesn't matter. And a lot of these games, it's not going to matter. Because the players are bad. And the lower the skill ceiling gets, or the lower the skill floor gets because we lowered the bar so much, the more viable something like this is. Now, as soon as these players quit, as soon as these guys get their shit spaded, as soon as they move on to something else, yeah, this plane is absolute ass. It's absolute dog shit. But honestly, 100% honest, it's been a better experience than the Su-27. It's been a better experience, arguably, than the Mirage 2000, because you can contest these guys on their own terms. You can contest them at altitude. You can contest them in BVR. And the fact that these guys do not crank, the fact that these guys will not go cold, has a pretty big advantage. Now, this is the downside, though. You get a dude that pops up real close like that. You weren't looking with the radar in the correct direction. That's death. We die. We die. He dies. It's something that happens. And this happens with high-altitude stuff. It happens less with high-altitude stuff. But it also happens quite a bit with the mountain ratting strategy. So, like, when you come around a corner and you're like, I gotta acquire the target, man. I gotta, like, shoot the missile and turn away. This plane's not really good at turning away. Really, the only plane that's, like, really good at turning away are F-15C and Gripen. And Gripen's a lot better at it because Gripen has, like, infinity countermeasures, so it just, like, shits out the chaff cloud from God. And a lot of the times the missile will just miss because also the radar cross-section is tiny as fuck. But with AIM-120s, with the radar, the plane is... It's not as frustrating as some other stuff because you load into this thing, you're like, yeah, I'm a geriatric old man with an MP3 player. But I'm not expecting to set the world on fire here. We come in, we get an AIM-9M to the face. That's pretty typical. If you get pushed to close range, the other guy has the advantages. And the thing is, if you set up for the notch, if you try to notch the 120s that are coming in, if the guy has a follow-up 9M, you've put yourself in the perfect aspect to eat that 9M. Also, if you're 90 degrees offset from a guy, so if a guy's coming in from 90 degrees to your left, he's effectively like halfway to being behind you. So if you don't have a superior flight model, and the guy's not completely ass trash, he's probably going to win. Which is a pretty obvious thing when you think about it. It's pretty obvious from like a lot of player perspectives, but it's also not obvious from people that don't understand. But we come in, we get this guy again, we go to the spider hole because we got killed by the same guy and we know where he's at. We go to the spider hole, we shoot him, he's dead, we trade. 19-4 in the F4F KMS. Not bad. Would I say this plane's good? No, absolutely not. It's literally exactly what you expect. It's an F4 Phantom with better missiles. Like, we don't need to kid ourselves. This thing is a practical joke. The Tornado F3 late is also like a practical joke. Like, you're not going to see it on my channel because I don't have it grinded. I'm not going to do it because it's the same gameplay. You shoot the missile, you turn away, the guy flies into it because, like, he doesn't know that the RWR exists, or, like, he thinks that he's pushing you and, like, doesn't realize that an AIM-120 can hit him. It's the same gameplay. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not the worst in the world, but but its viability is entirely predicated on the enemy team being completely clueless and not knowing how to react to AMRAAMs. Anyways, that's the video.